Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to Anchieta Theater at Sesc Consolação. The understanding of the corporal understanding in the physical activities as an essential component of the human development goes beyond the immediate benefits for health. It goes through the consideration of permanence of active behaviors along your life cycle, and multiple factors contribute for this to effective the rights of kids, adults, and elders to practice exercise, granting corporal experience to peculiarities of each stage of life. This is a fundamental step to be taken, but we have other challenges. One of them is to prolong the effects of this corporal experience in the process of human development. Another challenge is to promote the effectiveness of sports and leisure policies in Brazil. All this goes along with the goal of the second seminar, Sports and Human Development, Sports and Active Leisure Along Life, treating the perspective and possibilities of sports to the formation of Brazilian adults. With the Human Development Program from CPUSP, the network Rede Mudança Social SESC, Institute Ayrton Senna, a UN program for development, and the support of the Sports Ministry, Municipal Secretary of Sports and Leisure in São Paulo, and Municipal Sports of Education of the state of São Paulo. This seminar integrates the actions of the third week of Sports for Social Change 2014. We would like to thank the presence of Maria Alice Zimmerman. She's the organizer of the Olympic Games and the Education Secretary. Mr. Fernando Augusto de Lima Mendes Jr., President of the Squash Federation, Emílio Miranda, Director of Sports Practice from the University of São Paulo, Mr. Maria Paula Silva, Magic Paula, founder of the Institute Passe de Mágica, Ana Moser, President of the Institute Sports and Education and the NGO Athletes for Brazil, and her husband, Benetti, representing Professor Arlindo Júnior. He's the mayor of the university city from the University of São Paulo. To start the opening ceremony of the second seminar, Sports and Human Development, Sports, we will listen the presentation of the representatives and the public powers that support these initiatives. So we invite Maria Luisa Souza Dias from Sesc São Paulo, representing now the director, Professor Danilo Santos de Miranda. Good morning. Good morning. I would like to thank the presence of you all, especially the presence of Luis Francisco Salles, our Sports Secretary for the state of São Paulo, our colleague Maria Alice Zimmerman, coordinators of the Students' Olympic Games of the public schools of the University of the state of São Paulo. Jenny Kasten, she's assistant to strategic planning for the development of the PNUD. Paula Corsaz, member of the coordination team of the program Human Development Through Sports of the University of São Paulo. Aline Porto, Director of Education of the Institute Ayrton Senna. Jorge Jaime, our peer from Jaime. He's a leisure manager of the National Department of SESC. And Rosi Gil, she's assistant of the National Department of SESC. And all the athletes we have here, Paula, Ana Mose, thank you for your presence. Our peers from ACM, time. Thank you for your presence. And I would like to say that you are welcome to the seminar, Sport and Human Development, that unites the works of different parties, supporters, and sponsors for the strengthening of ideas and actions to promote the development of human potentialities along the different stages of life. This is the first registration, I would like to say, to reaffirm the importance of partnerships and the supports for the creation of a plural dialogue with the public goal and with a long reach. SESC is a fruit of a nation promoted by the productive classes with the support of the government in favor of workers and their family, with a strong determination to create a fairer society. Currently, business people from tourism services manage this institution, whose goal is to favor the improvement of life standards and the well-being of people. This is so important currently. The goal of the work developed by SESC along its 68 years of life is the human being. Citizen is, and the promotion factor of this human being is education. Education, permanent education, not the formal education, grounded in the connection between culture in its broader sense, including arts, tradition, popular culture, sports, and physical activities. And as sports, also health and leisure, enabling the reach of a full citizenship. Therefore, it's part of our action lines to promote the creation and strengthening of spaces and discussion spaces about the good practices and experiences, be them local or international, aiming the full development and improvement of life standards of a large number of citizens. Therefore, we fulfill a goal of getting closer with the multiple private and public agents to facilitate the circulation and spread of knowledge. Therefore, this educational process based on culture and sports may contribute with their changing potential. Transformation, that means habits change and adoption of a healthy standard, like regularly practice of sports. Promoted by SESC São Paulo through its permanent actions, through our campaign Move Brazil, whose target for 2016 is to increase the reach and the number of people practicing sports. And we also have different parties that I see here in this event today. The topics to be discussed here show its importance, be it because they develop the creation of ability, create repertoires, or because they incentivize contact with diversity. Because we acknowledge in the example of athletes, or because we participate in the cooperation between groups and communities to forge better citizens. This mission is also clear in the meeting the integration of people with others, with public spaces and other institutions of society, so that they can exercise their rights as citizens, so they can participate with their dreams, projects, and aims for the future to build a diverse, balanced, and welcoming society. To conclude, I reinforce the importance of the contribution of the partners from the different spheres, university, public agencies, and organizers from the civil society to increase the critical debate of ideas and actions under the focus aiming to consolidate this space of dialogue, aiming to establish a democratic access to goods and services produced by society. Moreover, I would like to highlight the public presentation of the first annual report of the program Cities of Sports, promoted by the NGO Athletes for Brazil, that shows their willingness to evaluate, assess critically what is being done. I reinforce, therefore, my congratulations to all of you here, and I would like to express that you have an active participation in this seminar. Thank you very much. We thank Mr. Maria Luisa Souza Dias, and now we invite Mrs. Aline Porto from the Instituto Ayrton Senna. Good morning. On behalf of Instituto Ayrton Senna, I would like to thank SESC and its team for the welcoming and the promotion of this event. I would also like to thank the Sports Secretary, PNUD, USP, CPUSP, as well as all other partners and sponsors of this event. I would like to also thank the presence of all of you, both professionals or those interested in sports, education, culture, human development, but above all, how the union of all these areas, topics, and efforts can promote what we call sports and human development of human beings in all its potentialities, in all their spheres, in all areas that we may acquire or get through the combination of a series of activities and actions related to sports and their byproducts. When we talk about human development, Instituto Ayrton Senna started to work 20 years ago. We'll celebrate our 20th anniversary this year, and the first activity, the first program we developed was a program called Education Through Sports. So this program is also celebrating its 20th anniversary. And it seems natural that an institute founded by a sport racer. So we believe this is the first path, but it was not the first path. The first activity of Instituto Ayrton Senna was born by a belief of Ayrton Senna that to have really access for the country to change, for it to have an impact, he needed to start working with children and youngsters. And by doing so, we need to develop all their potentialities. And everything would start through education and a development of a set of competences that might bring along the lifespan of these youngsters better choices, more access to success, both professionally and socially. And the belief of Viviane and Senna is that sport is a solution, because they observed what sports brought to Ayrton's life, what the impact it may have in the life of other millions of Brazilians that could get engaged with sports. On top of this, at the same time, during the 90s, UNESCO published a study related to the pillars for human development. So what a human being we were moving from the 20th century to 21st century. We were defining what a 21st century citizen would need. They need competence in 4 areas. First, how do we learn? How do we learn? We are always learning. Human beings are always learning. So we should help children to learn. The other pillar is to know how to do, to have a profession, an occupation, to have an activity that has an economic, social, and professional impact. So these 2 things are related to education, to development. We go to school, we attend school to acquire knowledge, we go to a professional course to acquire a different set of knowledge to help us along our life. But 2 other aspects that were very important for human development that were not explored or discussed in the world of education and the other topics related to education, or how to live with other people. We have lots of benefits, and we imagine that we learn to live with others naturally. But there are some different ways of the educational path to learn, to improve this ability, reinforces and give tools to all of us that works with this. And finally, to learn how to be. A series of competences that together allows a complete human development. These 4 pillars formed and forged, or the milestones of Instituto Ayrton Senna. So Institute started with the work connected to sports, not to develop athletes. Of course, we have stories, many of our children along the partnership that we started with USP and then with other universities. They have a career in sports, be it as athletes or sports professional. They help create new sportsmen and so forth. But the goal was not to train sports professional. We wanted to incorporate sports in the lifestyle of people, because sports help the development of these 4 pillars. It helps you to learn. Each movement in the basketball, in a tennis game, you learn something new. You are going to learn how to do. This is an exercise that can offer you a professional life, but you learn to work. You learn teamwork, to collaborate, to know how to behave with diversity, and you also learn to be self-discipline, to manage yourself, to be persistent. So you have a set of learnings that are very diverse, and 2 curriculums that walk hand in hand. Cognitive capabilities, the one that is connected to knowledge, but also social and emotional knowledge that are very important for the human development. Along these 20 years of story, the Institute, based on this groundwork, we started to develop other programs until we have complete educational solutions connected with integral in full education that integrate the formal educational environment, what you do in the school environment with different environments that led you to have an impact in the different learning environments.
This is what we were able to learn along these 20 years. It seems intuitive when we start talking about these skills, you notice that they make sense. But throughout time, we understood that science brought many evidences based on studies, longitudinal studies, which demonstrate the real impact of all these skills, being more disciplined, having perseverance, working in teams, having self-management and control, and openness to the new, because this is what sports allows people to. And all of this has an impact, proven scientifically, in the development of skills like reading, writing. In a study with the government of Rio, we saw that the students who are more disciplined through learning it through sports and other activities that we will discuss today, has a 30% better performance in mathematics. But what has sports to do with the learning of mathematics? Everything. Because the more disciplined student has more endurance in learning subject matters that need more discipline. When people also do sports, they have a 30 to 40% better performance in Portuguese because they learn to have expression, more openness, more extroversion, which is also helped by sports. So all of this reinforced our belief. We had the subjective knowledge based on all these studies of UNESCO, but today we have really hard evidence based on statistics connected to a series of analysis and studies with evaluation instruments that allow for this correlation. And the third strong correlation that we learned throughout the years is that studies which demonstrate how big an impact the sports have in economic fulfillment, in emotional one, and stability, and how they deal with drugs, violence. For all of this, we have a lot of scientific evidence showing how the development of these skills help in the emotional balance of those people. So the knowledge that was born in a more conceptual way can today show through the results of all the efforts of ours and of partners worldwide, through studies and evidences showing the importance of us through projects and programs like the ones represented here can transform in the lives of children and adults to have this impact. We keep on working in education through sports, learning from it to spread it to other solutions in education through the partnerships represented here today, taking the importance of sports and of development further. Thank you. Aline, we now invite Mrs. Paula Corsacas from the coordination team of Human Development Project through sports. Good morning to all of you. I reserved the greetings and the acknowledgements for the end of my talk. I want to thank for the Sports Secretariat and the Director of Sports Practices, who was already with us 20 years ago with the creation of sports and creation of talent, conceiving. We did not imagine how far we would get in this journey together. I am talking in the name of two institutions, Program of Development through Sports, which I'm part of since its beginning, and in the name of HIMSS as a member of the representatives. And it is my task to organize together with the supports people this event for you. And to open the second seminar of sports and human development officially, I decided to tell you a little of the background of this event. And I chose to tell it to you because it is worthwhile to understand this journey we built, to understand the spirit of the experience that we are proposing here in these 2 days, and also throughout the week, thinking about the subject of the gathering, which is sports for human transformation, social transformation. The name previously was sports with children and adolescents at USP, and the aim was to celebrate the 10 years of sports and talent. It was the first decade of its existence, but the event was so joyful and successful that we did not stop since then. Since then, we had 7 editions of this event, discussing several subjects, having sports as the articulating axis of the discussions, but not limited to it. Every year with different subjects and articulation with different social actors, and the issuing of public policies for children and adolescents, the occupation of public spaces in this perspective of educational cities, and the role of the Secretariat of Culture and Sports, so that we can have the right to live in the streets again, to play in the streets. And in 2010, we acknowledged that sports became the central subject of this event after a few editions. And this happened when we entered with our whole soul and body in the sports decade of Brazil. We got close to experience what was the World Cup and what we expect to be the Olympic Games still. And then, in this year 2010, we chose sports as a central subject for us to look at what we were doing with the sports experience of children, and trying to project for the future what the inheritance of the sports experiences would be for the life as adults. And then we started to change the feature of the event, and this led us ahead. It was a very good decision at that moment. In 2012, the event was rebaptized and started to be called Seminar of Sports and Human Development, and it happens every 2 years, and every other year we also have the another event having to do with sports. In 2007, we started to create the sports network for social change. This movement had already started in South Africa and United Kingdom. We did a network with those countries, and the big objective of HIMSS was to mobilize and strengthen the organizations engaged with the causes of democratization of sports and human development promotion. Not only sports organizations, but also the ones working with children and youth and human development in its essence. After creating HAMES, we had the two editions of Sports for Human Change, for social change, to celebrate it and also to mobilize, to call the attention for relevant issues and to shout out and regarding the demands we have for the population as to a whole education and sports, participating in sports, and this is now the third edition of Sports for social change. And 10 years after, when we were about to celebrate 20 years, which we will celebrate next year, and in the middle of the journey of this decade for sports in Brazil, we hope to have a virtuous journey ahead of us. The seminar that started with a celebrating event and in a small edition, and now it has a strong and intensive collaboration in the last 18 months at least. We have met and discussed a lot to design this event. This collaboration was possible with the great partners that Aline and Maria Luisa already mentioned. Each one in its field of action has contributed very much. I want to thank each one of you and the institutions, starting by Ayrton Senna Institute, which was our supporter. It was the mother, in fact, of the idealizer of everything we do. And we have the father too, and it has helped us in all the endeavors we have been doing. As Aline already said, the Institute was being born 20 years ago, inspired by the values of Ayrton Senna, and launching the program Education Through Sports, which we are part until now, and was a pioneer in a practice which is education through sports, which is still inspirational for HAMS. And as of this year, Instituto Ayrton Senna is part of HAMS, so this is a concrete result of the partnership in organizing the event. HAMS is still young, as I told you. Out of all the institutions, it is the youngest, but it has already proven its strength in mobilizing, and we still have the challenge of reaching the furthest corners of our country. But we have representatives of several states and cities who came to be present here in this event. And the revitalization and revival of the third week, which starts as of today. I want to thank PNUD, which since the beginning of the creation of HAMS has supported the structuring and the development and strengthening of the network. They make our meetings throughout Brazil possible, the possibility of those debates and promotion of transformation. SESC as well, who has been a great partner, not only in this seminar, but all the events we have carried out. It is not an exaggeration to reinforce how SESC is gigantic in democratizing throughout the whole country sports and sports practices. It is a reference for all other institutions with its quality programs. And finally, As the former name of the seminar always suggested, the essence of these gatherings was to get together reflection, action, theory, and practice, science, and the floor, the real place where things happen. So this is a moment of dialogue as of what we want to build as of now, which can foster the changes we wish for sports and for the whole country. I want to thank each one of you who made it possible to have this big gathering, and also to make movements in our whole nation with quality programs, and which also can be accessible to all Brazilians. This is the motto of the seminar and of HAMS as well, and the cause for which all the partners work in their day-to-day. I expect that as of now it becomes a source of inspiration, of flipping out action and transpiration throughout our whole life. And I wish you fun. I wish that you have fun. We thank Mrs. Paula Corsacas, and we invite Mrs. Jenny Carlson, official of the UN program for PNUD. Good morning, everyone. I am speaking in the name of PNUD. I want to thank SESC for receiving us in this event. I want to thank all of you who are present here participating in such an important event. It is a great pleasure to be here with partners of PNUD like SESC, HAMS, and the Ayrton Senna Institute. I also want to thank the Municipality of São Paulo, who is also present with us. For the UN program, it is very important to have this event for human development here in Brazil and having sports as a strategy. This sports has numerous benefits for individuals, communities, societies, and human development in the whole country. The UN recognizes the importance of sports. In 2013, the General Assembly of the UN proclaimed the 6th of April as the International Sports Day for Development and Peace. It was an important milestone for the recognition of sports as a tool for global human development. And it is a low-cost and high-impact tool with a great potential to reach the most vulnerable populations, the discriminated ones, and the excluded ones within our societies, not only here in Brazil, but worldwide. Sports is also helping the countries in their efforts to reach the development of the millennium, which is fundamental for the work of UN and PNUD. Therefore, sports is increasingly important for PNUD's work in Brazil. And Brazil is experiencing a unique decade, the decade of sports. And with this, we have a unique opportunity to reinforce the importance of sports in a unique manner in the country, to establish new partnerships and articulation between private sector, civil society, academia, and politics, in order to include sports in the agendas of sustainable human development. PNUD and UN is supporting several initiatives, like the platform designed for the movement and HAMS itself. We know it is a social impact change of working in networks. It doesn't help working alone, and that's why we are here with you today. And we are very glad in supporting networks like HIMSS and the network for the movement. We expect that this event is an opportunity to exchange best practices, ideas about actions in the future. So to close, in the name of PNUD, I greet our partners. I congratulate for being able to hold this event here. And I wish an excellent event and excellent results. We now invite Mr. Luis Salles, Adjunct Secretary of the City of São Paulo's Sports Secretariat.
Bom dia.
Good morning.
Estava pensando aqui pouco antes de falar.
I was thinking while talking to some colleagues of SESC about the feeling that it is so great to be able to stop and talk about sports, quality of life, human development through leisure activities, recreational ones. If we consider São Paulo, the extended São Paulo with 39 municipalities, we have 20 million people and 11 million in the capital city. The economists, in general terms, when they started looking at cities, they identified two great strengths, one of concentration, this is how cities get formed, and a dispersion or congestion force. This is when cities start to lose quality. We notice that São Paulo have a big period, a large period still of aggregation, of concentration of efforts. And sports have a lot to do with the urban spaces, with the quality of life that we desire for our inhabitants. We decided to open a symbolic space, which is Tietê Club. It is totally recovered after having been closed for a long period, and it was delivered to the population, and it is 2 kilometers only away from downtown. Other destinations could be given to it, but our choice was for sports and recreation.
We understand that sports plays a very important role in the urban development. It improves conviviality, the public space, so we should really fight for this occupation. This year, I have a friend that is older than myself. If 68 is the year that did not end, 2014 is the year that does not want to end. We have demonstrations during the beginning of the year and people on the streets demonstrating against the Olympic Games. But Argentina lost after all. So we kept even. We had elections that was really difficult, but the day after election we should wake up and look forward. We should look to the future. This democratic exercise, it's very valuable. It's one of the most valuable things we have in the country. We come from a transition that is very strong, a very important break, and the next day we wake up and we keep going. Looking for 2015, we held a meeting. We have in our calendar 154 street events, bike runs, marathons.
O estoque que a gente tem de atividade física programada.
So the number of sports activities that we have just in one segment, street sports and street events. So we should pay due attention to this. We should really promote sports and make it be a routine in the life of the population so we can do more. We have lots of things for 2015. We are finishing the year. The year is getting to a close, and we hope to have a very productive year in 2015. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Mr. Luis Salles, and once again we thank the previous presenters. And we close this opening ceremony right now. While the stage is being prepared, we remind that a certificate will be sent by email. Therefore, we reinforce the importance of signing the presence list and fill the field for your email address.
Dando sequência aos trabalhos e andamento ao seminário, teremos agora
our program will have the opening conference, Physical Literacy, alfabetização corporal. For this, we invite to be the mediator of this conference, Mr. Edson Jesus Manuel from the Sports and Physical Education School from the Universidade de São Paulo. And the speaker, Mrs. Melanie Mckee, Vice President of the International Physical Literacy Association and Professor of the Health and Physical Education from the University Hellis in Belfast, Ireland.
Fiquem à vontade. Please have your place. We
inform questions may be addressed in writing to the table. We have the support of two employees that will collect all your questions. Just raise your hand and they will go after you. You should include your email because if we can't answer your question, the speaker will do it later. Good morning. Talking about this number of years, 10, 20 here, 10 there, I remember when my uncle made 92, and he said many years, but I have so many things to do. We, professionals of sports and physical education, we build spaces. In this sense, contrary to the story, physical education is not connected with medicine or health. Physical education is connected with architecture because we build spaces for social and personal actions. And by space, I mean physical space, material space, but also the social, cultural, and material space. In this sense, space is not opposite to time, but it's a space and time in a continuous movement. Therefore, we, professionals of physical education and sports, we have built historical spaces, so much so that we help people to become individuals that may manifest their body and grow with their body. With their experience, they can build their own development. They can be subject to their own development. The concept of physical literacy, it's a symbolic tool to help us think how to build these spaces. One of the big advantages of this concept is to avoid duality, especially the known Cartesian duality. In its most orthodox approach, create an abyss between mind and body. We do not have a similar concept in Brazil to physical literacy. We have some close ideas, according to my interpretation. Similar ideas in line with authors like Mauro Betti, Eleanor Kunz, and Mauro Bratti. Therefore, today we have a unique opportunity to listen to Professor Melanie Mckee that work with the concept of physical literacy, not only in its proposition, but in its translation. That is, the development in programs of physical education and sports. For me, it's a personal pleasure to be here to listen to you, and a professional privilege to be mediating this conference. I hand it over to Professor Melanie Mckee.
Thank you for your welcome introduction. As co-founder, trustee, and vice chair of the International Physical Literacy Association, I am deeply honoured to be provided with this opportunity to introduce physical literacy at this conference and also to the people of Brazil. The aim of my presentation is to outline the concept of physical literacy and to explain how it values previously neglected contributions that our embodied dimension makes to human development and existence. I also hope to illustrate how the philosophical underpinnings of physical literacy can translate into both policy and into practice. In doing so, extensive reference will be made to the work of Professor Margaret Whitehead, founder of the concept of physical literacy and lifelong president of the International Physical Literacy Association. It is hoped by the end of my presentation you will agree that physical literacy confirms our embodiment as a fundamental aspect of our human condition, and that you will develop new perspectives of the role of physical activity, sport, and active leisure in providing embodied experiences that develop physical literacy and that contribute towards and enrich human development. The original definition provided by Professor Margaret Whitehead has been recently modified and endorsed by the International Physical Literacy Association. In short, physical literacy can be described as a disposition to capitalise on the human embodied capability wherein the individual has the motivation, confidence, physical competence, knowledge and understanding to value and take responsibility for engagement in physical activities for life. In order to develop understanding of the concept, I will firstly describe the three elements of physical literacy and then explain the references to both embodied and capability. As set out in the definition, the three essential elements of the concept are the affective, denoted by reference to motivation and confidence. Physical, represented by the term physical competence. And cognitive, expressed by reference to knowledge and understanding. It must be stressed that all elements are equally important, as each is essential to realise progress on an individual physical literacy journey. For example, without motivation, there would be no incentive to take part in physical activity or to appreciate the value of the activity. Without the development of physical competence, there would be no reason for individuals to value the experience as satisfying and rewarding. Without knowledge and understanding in respect of both the nature of movement and the holistic benefits of exercise, there would be a lack of rationale for individuals to take responsibility for their own participation through life. It is important that this point is not overlooked when planning and delivering opportunities for developing physical literacy, a point which will be reinforced throughout this presentation. Recall how the definition of physical literacy includes a reference to the embodied capability. We will now consider both terms, embodiment and capability, in more detail. We are embodied. As Professor Whitehead explains, every human is a physical being and exists only because each is by nature embodied. We are essentially beings in the world, beings who relate to the world via our embodiment. Embodiment is therefore fundamental to human life and human development. Physical literacy is thus the human potential that springs from our nature as embodied beings. To develop understanding of physical literacy in this sense, it is important to consider two approaches towards embodiment. Dualism, which considers the body as an object, and monism, which considers the body as lived or lived embodiment. In Western cultures, our embodied dimension is influenced by an enduring dualist view which perpetuates embodiment as a concrete, observable form, as a thing or physical object. Reference to this human condition usually refers to its physical condition or its performance, and this is the beginning and end of our embodiment. Everyday language, which refers to the body as an object, or which makes distinctions between the body and mind, reflects and promotes dualistic thinking. The dualist view of the human condition has remained embedded in the Western psyche due to the firm roots implanted by Plato's philosophical view of the superiority of the man's mind or intellect as opposed to the inferiority of the body. Many have since contested this view, including Bresler, who recognised the interdependence of the mind and the body, and counter-argued that the body is in the mind and that the mind is in the body. Notwithstanding these assertions, dualist views have been entrenched in Western cultures to such an extent that habitual language use reaffirms dualism in this way. The language of dualism therefore overlooks the fact that there is more than one way in which the body contributes to our nature as human beings. Monism rejects dualism's contention that a person comprises two separable parts, the body and the mind, with the body viewed as an object inferior to the mind. The designation of our embodiment as purely an object or machine is viewed as unacceptable and insensitive to monists, as it arguably disregards and trivialises a key dimension of ourselves. By contrast, monism views the person as essentially an indivisible whole. Therefore, embodiment influences life, not only as an instrument that can be used for overtly functional purpose, but also as an underlying capability that contributes to, for example, cognitive and affective development. Physical literacy is founded on the acceptance of the monist view that there is much more of significance to our embodied nature than just its object form. Alongside the body object, there is the body as lived or lived embodiment. This latter mode of embodiment contributes to many aspects of life on a pre-reflective or pre-conscious level. However, the lack of conscious awareness of this mode of our embodiment, rather than making this dimension of ourselves less important, actually makes a great deal of its significance, as it is proposed that the subconscious, functioning below our awareness, manages the majority of our everyday functioning. To summarise, physical literacy is founded on and relies on an appreciation of embodiment in both modes, the body as object and the body as lived. That individuals can and do view embodiment as an object or instrument must not conceal the ways that as a pre-reflective or pre-conscious level, the lived embodiment is central in making us the human beings that we are. A significant challenge in establishing the concept of physical literacy is to help people understand the role of the lived embodiment and subsequently to show how this supports a monist view of the human being beyond its obvious instrumental functions. The monist perspective acknowledges the centrality of our embodied nature in many aspects of human existence, as embodiment enables us to interact with our environment and provides the foundation for the development of a wide range of capabilities. Physical literacy is therefore referred to as a capability, which can be defined as a potential all human beings possess. To better understand physical literacy, it is important to appreciate that as a human being, we comprise a range of capabilities or dimensions through which we can interact with the world. Two approaches which support the view of multiple dimensions of human beings are proposed. Nussbaum refers to the expression of these aspects of human nature as capabilities, described as what people are actually capable of doing and becoming, whereas Gardner refers to these as intelligences. Although the two categorizations of human potential arise from different perspectives on being human, they both identify aspects or dimensions of humanness and recognize the expression of that dimension in some form of action. In both cases, but in different ways, our embodiment is acknowledged as fundamental human characteristic, offering potential for development and contributing towards the quality of life. On this definition, the deployment of each dimension can be described as a particular capability. Each person comprises an interconnected system of dimensions, and physical literacy describes the expression of our embodied dimension as one aspect of our innate human nature. It is important to consider how, as we move through life, we will each be confronted by different situations and contexts, in relation to which our capabilities may need to be drawn on and adapted. The potential significance of each capability will not diminish as life is lived, although its expression may differ. As Nussbaum indicates, it is open to each individual to capitalise on or disregard any aspect of their potential, and some people may choose not to develop or use a particular capability. This last assertion is perhaps of particular interest to you, as it is arguably your aspiration to encourage individuals to view and value physical literacy as a capability and to foster a disposition to capitalise on the human embodied capability. It is asserted that the only way individuals can realise their full potential and live a fulfilled life is to actively engage with the environment. As the embodied dimension is implicated in much of this interaction, there is no doubt this human capability has the potential to play a central role in enhancing the quality of life. Our embodied capability is so integral to life that it is all but impossible to conceive of an unembodied existence. Realisation of a fuller life through our embodied capability is evidenced by considering the broader contribution and specific contributions of physical literacy. Acceptance of the broader contribution of physical literacy requires us to accept how we become more human as we exercise any of our potential capabilities. There is a sense in which these life experiences are self-affirming, intrinsically satisfying and rewarding. Each capability is of value in its own right and will enable the individual to flourish in a different way. However, each will contribute to the well-being of the whole person. For example, Exercising our powers to appreciate art will yield its own positive feedback that contributes to personal fulfillment and sense of self. Each of these activities will make us who we are and build our self-confidence. Physical literacy is no exception. Physical literacy, as the expression of a fundamental capability, is one vehicle through which individuals can realise and develop their characteristic human nature. For example, capitalising on embodied potential can undoubtedly contribute to the sense of self. The self-respect and self-confidence acquired through the deployment of embodied potential can be profoundly fulfilling. Using this human capability brings to the fore an essential and fundamental aspect of our being. Effective deployment of the embodied capability can provide holistic and rewarding experiences such as learning a new skill. Mastery of this skill can be a self-affirming experience of ourselves as embodied beings. A satisfying and profound experience of improving physical competence, of growing independence and also self-realisation. This point will also be reinforced when we explore the attributes of physical literacy. In addition to the intrinsically valuable and satisfying experience of involvement in physical activity, there are a number of specific additional benefits. Building up resistance to diseases and illnesses, invigoration of the respiratory and cardiovascular system, release of tension, social engagement, are all additional examples of well-documented health benefits of physical literacy and its contribution to an overall feeling of well-being. However, it should be remembered that engagement in embodied experiences can also contribute towards cognition, language, and reasoning. The lack of speech in the first 12 to 18 months of childhood does not exclude learning as children's cognition develops through their embodied experience. For example, propositional language such as under, over, near, and far only become comprehensible in the context of embodied experiences. Concepts such as these are experiences initially pre-reflectively via embodied interaction with the world. So far, we have explored components of the definition of physical literacy, including the three elements and the terms embodied and capability. The definition of physical literacy may become more meaningful when we consider the accompanying set of attributes or symptomatic behaviours that you see here. The attributes of physical literacy serve to describe a cluster of the behaviours that are symptomatic to making progress on a physical literacy journey. On account of our holistic nature, individuals who are making progress on their individual journey demonstrate a range of attributes or symptomatic behaviours. A physically literate individual will be motivated to capitalise on innate movement potential to make a significant contribution to the quality of life. They will move with poise, economy and confidence in a wide variety of physically challenging situations. They will demonstrate sensitive perception in reading all aspects of the physical environment, anticipating movement needs or possibilities, and responding appropriately to these. Physically literate individuals will develop a well-established sense of self as embodied in the world, which alongside an articulate interaction with the environment engenders positive self-esteem and self-confidence. They will also convey sensitivity to and awareness of embodied capability, leading to fluent self-expression through non-verbal communication and to perceptive and empathetic interaction with others. Finally, physically literate individuals will have acquired the ability to identify and articulate the essential qualities that influence the effectiveness of their own movement performance. The relationship between the attributes is best described in two stages. Motivation, confidence, physical competence, and effective interaction with the environment are the three attributes that form the core of the concept and are mutually reinforcing. Figure 2.1 illustrates the interrelationship between these three attributes of physical literacy. Motivation can encourage participation, and this involvement can enhance confidence and physical competence. The development of this confidence and competence can in turn maintain or increase motivation. Development of confidence and physical competence can facilitate fluent interaction with a range of environments. This effective relationship with the environment, with the new challenges this presents, can in turn enhance confidence and physical competence. The success of developing effective relationships with a range of environments can add to motivation, and this enhanced motivation can in turn encourage exploration and promote effective interaction with the environment. Figure 2.2 shows a relationship between all of the attributes. As can be seen, the other three attributes, D, E and F, characteristically develop as motivation, competence, physical competence and fluent interaction grow. For example, as individuals have rewarding experiences in physical activity, they can experience a positive sense of self and enhance global self-confidence. In addition, awareness of the embodied dimension alongside a sound self-esteem will promote fluent self-expression and perceptive and empathetic interaction with others. Knowledge and understanding will be enriched by all aspects of participation. Figure 2.2 also shows how attributes D, E and F can help to further the core attributes of motivation, confidence, physical competence and fluent interaction with the environment. For an example, an assured sense of self will feed into motivation and the willingness to accept challenges, while fluent interaction with others will add to confidence and the ability to work alongside others in physical activity settings. Equally, knowledge and understanding will support the appreciation of developing physical competence and the perception of different environments. Additional attention will now be given to attributes A, B and D to develop understanding of physical literacy. Motivation is understood to be a drive, willingness and eager to take a particular action. At the heart of physical literacy is a desire to be active, to persist with an activity, and to improve physical competence and try new activities. Physically literate individuals will exhibit a joy of movement, celebrate through movement their ability to capitalise on their embodiment, be confident in their physical abilities, knowing that success is likely, enjoy a challenge, and be prepared to take time, expend effort and fund involvement in physical activity. Motivation is an essential precursor for the necessary application and concentration to thrive in the movement context. Without motivation, there will be little chance that physical literacy will be progressed. It is often suggested that the reason why many people seldom take part in physical activity is because of their lack of motivation. Early experiences may have helped individuals develop their physical competence, but have not fostered a desire or interest in continuing their involvement in physical activity. Aspects of their previous experiences could have been negative, and these memories persist to deter them from continuing their involvement in physical activity. Past experiences may not have been rewarding, with individuals experiencing little success. In worst-case scenarios, they may have been subjected to humiliation, criticism and ridicule from significant others, including parents, siblings, teachers, coaches and peers. Individuals' confidence and motivation may have been damaged. Indeed, the thought of participating in physical activity may engender anxiety or fear on the part of these non-participants. It is therefore critical for providers of opportunities to develop physical literacy to give due consideration to instilling and maintaining motivation in participants. Motivation essentially arises from the confidence and self-esteem acquired through experiences. That is, experience which has been perceived as successful and has been recognised as such. Situations where motivation is more likely to be promoted are those where appreciation is shown for both effort and improvement, and thus self-confidence and self-esteem are enhanced. In these situations, there's a celebration of each individual's abilities, and mutual respect is shown between all those involved. It might also be helpful to consider intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. The former can be described as an internal drive to take action for the benefit of the experience itself, and not as a means to other ends, whereas the latter refers to external factors typically beyond the individual's control, and occurs when we are motivated to perform a behaviour or engage in an activity in order to earn a reward, such as approval or validation by others, or also to avoid a punishment. In situations where motivation has been lost, measures have to be taken to encourage non-participants to re-engage in physical activity settings and explore the positive outcomes of participation. Forms of extrinsic motivation may be needed to initiate a return to being active. However, the goal with these individuals would be to offer opportunities for success, to nurture interest, and to reignite a drive to capitalise on the embodied capability. Where this is successful, there can be a return to intrinsic motivation, with individuals becoming self-motivated and no longer reliant on others or extrinsic rewards. Although physical competence is a central attribute displayed by a physically literate individual, it must be remembered that this attribute alone can never be the sole constituent of physical literacy. Expression of physical competence must be accompanied by a positive attitude towards physical activity. Nevertheless, as human movement is the basis of physical competence, it is essential that the fundamental constituents of this attribute are fully understood and appreciated. A number of systems of analysis have been proposed in respect of human movement. The analysis displayed is recommended by Professor Whitehead, as it is designed to embrace movement from birth throughout the lifespan. The analysis comprises 4 aspects of movement that recognises a growing refinement of deploying embodied capability. A young child's movement vocabulary encompasses movements such as rolling, crawling, walking, grasping, lifting, waving and clapping. Through continued use, the first movement vocabulary becomes established in the movement memory. The quality of executing this vocabulary is enhanced by its repeated application in a variety of situations. Refinement of this movement vocabulary is achieved through acquiring and applying a range of movement capacities to these basic competencies. These are described as simple, which includes balance, coordination and flexibility; combined, which combines flexibility, balance and coordination; and complex, which incorporates further combination of capacities such as hand-eye coordination needing dexterity. Individuals can then develop general and refined movement patterns. General movement patterns would include striking, while refined movements would include the development of striking as batting. As a final stage, development of specific movement patterns produces contextually designed patterns that are called for in particular activity settings. For example, the specific pattern of batting evolves into batting technique required in cricket or baseball. Professor Whitehead cautions that movement progress resembles the exploration of a 3-dimensional climbing frame rather than directional progress up a ladder, and reminds us that the goal is to make progress, not to master every aspect of human movement. To develop physical competence, and indeed other attributes, a range of settings should be experienced, as the numerous movement patterns and related movement capacities can only be further challenged in this way. Breadth and balance are key. Not only should participants experience a range of contexts for physical activity, but they should also have sufficient time to become familiar with these different settings, for example, the expectations and demands of the various contexts. To ensure breadth and balance of experience, it is helpful to categorise movement or physical activity settings, which is achieved by identifying different movement forms, as illustrated in Table 15.2. Adventure form is characterised by the focus on meeting risk and managing challenge within the natural and often unpredictable environments. Aesthetic and expressive form is engaged by the embodied dimension being used as an expressive instrument within a creative, aesthetic or artistic context. Athletic form is depicted by challenges placed on the embodied dimension to reach personal maximum power, distance, speed and accuracy within the context of competition in a controlled environment. Competitive form is expressed through the outwitting of opponents both singly and in teams, managing a variety of implements and objects, and coping with changing and challenging conditions and terrain in order to achieve predetermined goals. Fitness and health form is typified by the goal to increase movement ability through repetition, and there's a focus on the body function with a view then to effect gradual change. Finally, interactional or recreational form is characterised by the recognition that taking part in physical activity can be a social experience founded on the empathy between people as they move together. At an early stage, it is essential that young people have a positive experience of a wide range of structured and unstructured activities, as unless individuals have had a rich variety of experiences, they will not be able to make informed choices as they move throughout adulthood. Special consideration will now be given to attribute D, namely a sense of self, as it serves to highlight how embodied experiences can enhance human development by contributing towards the development of global self-esteem and self-worth. If we accept our embodiment as a significant aspect of our personhood through which we can interact with the world, then can we also accept that this dimension of ourselves plays an important part in shaping our self-concept and our attitude to ourselves? It will be argued that as individuals have rewarding experiences in respect to physical activity, their sense of self and global self-confidence can be enhanced. You are encouraged to consider whether and how involvement in the embodied experiences provided through the sport and physical activity settings that you develop and deliver can help engender a positive sense of self. For example, have you ever observed how when individuals develop their embodied potential and master new competencies, there is a growth in self-confidence reflected beyond the sport or physical activity setting into other aspects of their life? Perhaps then opportunities that aim to develop physical literacy could also help individuals experience positive self-perception in these domains and subsequently facilitate the development of a strong sense of self and higher self-esteem. Following consideration of my explanation of the definition and attributes, I hope and appreciate there will be a few questions arising, so I will try to address some of them now, as well as providing an opportunity at the end of my presentation. As I explain the answers, I encourage you to consider your own answers based on your own personal and professional experiences. The first question asks whether physical literacy is a state that can be achieved and thereafter maintained through life. The answer is no, as each individual is on his or her own physical literacy journey. This journey is continuous throughout life, however, demands and progress may fluctuate over the lifespan. Physical literacy is equally important during all stages of life. even in older adulthood, optimising movement ability is essential for engagement in everyday life, and maintenance of a physical literacy regime should be prioritised. The second question asks whether everyone is travelling along the same physical literacy journey. Again, the answer is no, as each individual journey is unique. Progress on a journey will be evident in situations where there is enhancement in respect of all or some of the symptomatic behaviour or attributes of physical literacy. Each journey is likely to encounter twists, turns, and maybe even setbacks along the way. Journeys may stall on account of a range of personal circumstances, some of which are beyond the individual's control. However, with determination and support, individuals can restart and indeed flourish. Question 3 asks whether physical literacy is accessible to and inclusive of everyone. And the answer is yes. Physical literacy is open to all, as it is both inclusive and universal. All human beings have the potential to realise this capability, notwithstanding the fact that its expression will be particular to the potentials with which the individual is endowed, and also the culture in which they live. In order to fully understand this question and response, endowment and culture will be considered further. In relation to endowment, unfortunately, the relentless focus on being physically gifted and exposure to high-level performance in Western countries contains a hidden message that this is the only manifestation of embodied ability worthy of attention. This results in many people judging themselves to be physically incompetent and has fostered a self-deprecating culture in respect of the way individuals disregard and regard their embodied capability. Many people dismiss suggestions that they have any potential in this area and purposefully avoid any involvement in physical activity, asserting they have no ability and it is not for them. The deployment of their capability in respect of their embodied dimension is not perceived as a potential source of achievement, satisfaction, or a feeling of well-being. Indeed, this is not the case. Almost without exception, all have the potential to achieve physical literacy and benefit from its expression. Apart from the severely physically disabled, all individuals possess the building blocks of physical literacy. It must surely be the case that each of us can find a context or contexts within which we can experience satisfaction and reward in expressing and developing physical literacy. Recall how each individual will be on their own personal physical literacy journey. All can make progress, and each will display physical literacy in the context of their own endowment. The important element is that individuals are making progress on their own physical literacy journey. For those with any form of disability, it is very important that they capitalise on their embodied capability, optimising this area of potential. Regrettably, in some situations, physical literacy is seen as less important for these individuals when in fact there is a view that it is more important. Parents, carers, coaches and teachers of these individuals need to appreciate that any development in physical competence is valuable and comparisons with those who have no disability are out of place. The focus on achievement for those with a disability is not relative to others, but is expressed in the charting of progress on the personal physical literacy journey each person makes. Even a small step on their physical literacy journey is valuable and should be celebrated. All individuals should be encouraged to make progress, thus widening their prospects and enhancing their life options. In respect of the cultural relevance, it is suggested that all individuals share the same embodied structure and functioning irrespective of the culture in which they are part. Deploying our embodied capability is fundamental to life as a human being, whenever or wherever life is lived. However, it is acknowledged that its specific expression will always be influenced by the particular physical demands and opportunities evident within a society, and also by the cultural significance of this dimension of ourselves. For example, in Western culture and everyday life, most individuals, other than those involved in manual labour, are seldom expected to walk far or carry heavy loads for prolonged periods of time. However, the nature of most of the tasks that are necessary today require more intricate coordination, more precision and less usage of large muscle groups, for example, driving a car or operating a computer. An interesting comparison could be made with the original hunter-gatherer, citizen of a third world country, an office worker, and a modern-day Inuit. If we return to question 4, this question asks whether an individual can be physically illiterate. The answer is yes, as it is possible for individuals at any stage of life to lack or lose the motivation, confidence and physical competence to value physical activity and fail to take steps to maintain activity. In this case, they can no longer be described as being physically literate. However, significant others and practitioners who are in contact with a physically illiterate individual should encourage and facilitate involvement in some form of physical activity. Positive and rewarding experiences have the power to enable the individual to start or restart their journey. Motivation, confidence and physical competence need to be nurtured in non-threatening settings. Realistic targets need to be set and appreciation shown for the effort and progress. Journeys may stop, but they can always be restarted. Question 5 asks, how should progress on a physical literacy journey be identified and recorded? It is advised that recording is more akin to charting progress or mapping a journey. Measuring or assessing physical literacy in the context of a journey is a form of formative assessment in which the progress made on the journey is recorded. Comparison with others is not appropriate, as each individual is on his or her own unique journey. This charting process is criterion referenced and ipsative, that is, always judged against previous achievement. Also, judgments should be made in respect of all elements within the definition: affective, physical and cognitive. Judgments made in respect of only one of these elements is not a true indication of progress on a physical literacy journey. The final question asks, who is responsible for the development of physical literacy? Please recall how the definition of physical literacy envisages that the individual will value and take responsibility for engagement in physical activities for life. To help foster this disposition, it is recognised that significant others who are in a position to influence attitudes to and competence in physical activity have a role to play. This diverse community can include parents and other family members, peers, childminders, practitioners in the early years, medical professionals, teachers, coaches, leisure management personnel, sport organisations, employers and also carers for the elderly. Delegates are encouraged to consider their role, the role of others and the extent to which they engage with significant others in the development of both their own physical literacy and the physical literacy of others. It is hoped that you appreciate the strong philosophical origins of the concept of physical literacy. But the question that could be asked is whether and how the concept translates into policy and practice. And this was a question I often asked myself in my former employment with Sport Northern Ireland, the lead development agency for sport and physical recreation in Northern Ireland. In my role, I was responsible for the strategic development of physical literacy throughout the country. And before I even started the post, I appreciated the challenge of trying to integrate a philosophical concept into policy and then into practice. So I will therefore discuss 2 examples from my own professional experience which demonstrate how the philosophy and the concept of physical literacy can be reflected at policy level and then also into practice and into a range of different interventions. Firstly, I will demonstrate how physical literacy can be strategically embedded in a high-level policy, namely a national strategy for sport. Sport Matters, the Northern Ireland Strategy for Sport and Physical Recreation, aspires to create a culture of lifelong involvement and enjoyment in sport. Following the consultation process that informed the development of this strategy, Sport Northern Ireland and the Irish Sports Council developed a conceptual framework which would encompass the interrelatedness of physical literacy, world-class athlete development, and lifelong involvement in sport and physical activity. The resultant lifelong involvement in sport and physical activity, or LISPA framework, which evolved from the long-term athlete development model promoted by István Bally, provides a theoretical model which underpins the aims, objectives and related targets of the National Strategy for Sport and Physical Recreation. The LISPA framework is a structured, progressive and research-inspired model for sports development, and it is these qualities which have led to the model becoming the preferred development framework for a significant number of sports development agencies in Ireland, the UK and beyond. This includes sports councils, educational institutions, national governing bodies of sport and sport clubs. Of critical importance is the prominence of physical literacy within the framework. The LISPA model is based on a significant body of research in sport and human development, offering important insights into the ways people develop, learn and grow. The various stages of the model are used to indicate the kinds of experiences which individuals should be exposed to at certain stages of their development. As I continue to describe the stages of and movement within and between the stages of the model, it is hoped that you will identify commonality with some of the aforementioned features of physical literacy, namely the affective, physical and cognitive elements of physical literacy, the aspects of movement suggested by Professor Whitehead when we studied Attribute D, physical competence, and also the idea of a physical literacy journey, which we discussed within the context of charting progress. So lifelong involvement in sport and physical recreation begins with an active start, the fundamentals and learning to play and practice. Active Start focuses on providing infants, toddlers and preschoolers with opportunities to participate in daily physical activity that promotes movement and communication and which also develops self-confidence and self-esteem. Unstructured physical activity and active play is recommended for toddlers and preschoolers. The fundamental phase provides a positive, enjoyable and fun approach so that the child can develop a love of sport and physical activity. A broad range of fundamental movement skills such as running, jumping, throwing and catching, and confidence in water are learned through play and basic, appropriate and enjoyable games. Participation in a wide range of physical activities is encouraged so that a child can experience the social and psychological benefits of being physically active. The learning to play and practice phase recognises that not all individuals want to pursue organised sports. Therefore, those who do not want to be will be equipped during this phase with many of the skills necessary to allow them to remain active throughout their lives. This phase still focuses on the social and fun element of sport and further develops fundamental and some sport-specific skills. Collectively, these three phases provide the foundation of the model and promote the need to create and sustain opportunities that will develop physical literacy. One of the basic principles of the framework is that those who have experienced properly designed physical literacy programs throughout childhood will be equipped with the knowledge, understanding, skills and attitudes necessary for them to make informed choices regarding participation or performance routes in one or more of the activities as they enter adulthood. Therefore, after participating in a range of positive experiences throughout childhood, individuals have 4 opportunities for continued involvement and further development in sport and physical recreation through active living, active recreation, organised sport and high performance. Active living acknowledges that a way of life that values physical activity as an essential part of living, characterised by the integration of physical activity into daily routines, for example, walking and cycling to work. Active recreation includes the use of leisure time for activities that require moderate energy expenditure and produce health and/or social benefits, usually performed in a non-competitive setting, for example, going to the gym. Organised sport recognises that participation in sports that have an element of planned and purposeful physical activity with competitive goals. Organised sports participation involves competing at all levels, including local, club, county, provincial and national levels. Finally, high performance considers long-term commitment to training and competing at the highest standard in pursuit of excellence at national and international levels. Individuals who choose to stay involved at a recreational level pursue active living, active recreation, and elements of organised sport opportunities. Individuals who wish to specialise in sports and progress towards elite performance pursue organised sport and high-performance sport. Inclusion and prominence of the term physical literacy in the LISPA model is not simply used to denote the different stages within the framework. Conversely, the ethos of physical literacy is fully integrated throughout the model and is apparent when considering the individual's movement through and between the different levels. Movement through LISPA is fluid rather than linear. This facilitates continual movement between different opportunities to suit the individual and has been designed to optimise opportunities for them to achieve their potential. Conversely, a prescribed set of stages through which individuals are guided to pursue would arguably militate against continual movement. Each opportunity aims to accommodate an individual's preference to the extent they wish to continue and develop their involvement. The fluidity implied within the LISPA framework recognises that during the course of their life, an individual may follow a number of different routes. Opportunities are not necessarily discrete from each other, and individuals can occupy more than one at the same time, and they can move whenever and wherever as appropriate. For example, an individual may be operating as a high performer in basketball and also choosing to swim recreationally twice a week. The LISPA model provides an inclusive framework that contributes to the integration of everyone and therefore accommodates the needs of different populations. All individuals, irrespective of ability, age and gender or experience, are encouraged and able to find a space in which they are comfortable and one in which they are able to pursue activity at a level of interest and participation suitable to them. Although the model stresses the importance of positive experiences in childhood in establishing a physically active lifestyle, LISPA also provides an opportunity for those who have missed out on the foundation stage to access sport and physical recreation, regardless of their age. Therefore, the model also aims to re-engage individuals who may have dropped out of sport and physical activity by providing a greater provision of choice and more extensive exposure to a range of activities. As you listen to my description of movement through LIPSA, you may be reminded of Professor Whitehead's description of how progress in movement competence should be likened to the exploration of a three-dimensional climbing frame rather than directional or vertical progress up a ladder. How individual progress should be likened to a physical literacy journey which is unique, ongoing, ever-changing and inclusive. Quite often, the ethos and language of a high-level policy or strategy such as LISPA does not always reach grassroots level and into our communities. However, a range of stakeholders, including Sport Northern Ireland, have aligned their policies and practice accordingly. For example, many governing bodies of sport, including Irish Rugby Football Union, the Irish Football Association and the Gaelic Athletic Association, have modified their coach education pathways, participation programmes, talent identification systems and competitive structures to reflect the active start and fundamental stages featured in the LISPA model. In particular, the following discussion of the multi-skills concept demonstrates how the LISPA framework and the underpinning concept of physical literacy have influenced practice. Commitment to the development of physical literacy throughout life and endorsement of the LISPA model is evidenced through the provisions of the National Strategy for Sport, which includes an aspiration to establish a network of multi-skill clubs, and the dedication of the various representatives within the sports development community in Northern Ireland to promote and deliver the multi-skills concept. As I continue to describe the multi-skills concept and the case study, it is hoped that you will make links with some of the previously mentioned features of physical literacy. Again, I refer to the affective, physical and cognitive elements of physical literacy, the attributes of physical literacy, and the aspects of movement and movement forms proposed by Professor Whitehead. A typical multi-skill session offers the opportunity to encounter a range of non-sport specific activities that are fun, challenging and enjoyable. Although a non-sport specific environment is created, children will develop a broad base of skills and attributes that are transferable into a range of sport and physical activity settings as they naturally progress through the LISPA continuum. The term multi-skills should always be interpreted widely to include the affective, physical and cognitive elements of physical literacy. This approach avoids early specialisation in a single sport. However, as it allows children to acquire a range of holistic skills that provide the foundation of athletic development, pathways into performance sport are still available to those children that choose to follow the training to train route identified on the LISPA model. This feature is important to gain and retain support from the talent identification divisions within the national governing bodies of sport, as there was a recognition that an increase in the number of children involved in physical literacy programmes should mean an increase in the talent identification pool. Also, if the physical literacy programmes such as multi-skills focused on all three domains or elements of physical literacy, then arguably this would mean better athletes and players, as they would also be developing the cognitive and affective skills as well as physical competence required to excel at elite level. The multi-skills environment can also be used to support the development of children that perhaps have already selected a particular sport but are looking for extra skills, challenges and variation. The Wildcats Club pathway, developed by Sport Northern Ireland, provides an example of a network of multi-skill clubs delivered throughout Northern Ireland in various settings. The Wildcat model illustrates how children from the age of 5 to 11 are encouraged to follow a progressive pathway affording opportunities which embrace the concept of physical literacy and which are aligned to the LISPA framework and promote multi-skills. As before, the term multi-skills within the Wildcats context should be interpreted widely to include all elements of physical literacy. This is further substantiated when one considers the coaching ethos which informs the planning and delivery of the Wildcat Club, namely the coaching the whole child philosophy advocated by Sports Coach UK. Sports Coach UK proposed that children can develop a range of capabilities through involvement in sport. The resulting Coaching Children curriculum, produced by Sports Coach UK, acknowledges the potential to develop the physical, technical, tactical and mental capabilities traditionally associated with sport as illustrated in Table 1. However, the accompanying Coaching the Whole Child philosophy challenged the coaching community to integrate personal and social development as a key outcome rather than a peripheral outcome to sport participation. Traditionally, any gains in the latter would be achieved as a consequence of good coaching, but would never be an explicit outcome for coaching. Figure 4 was thus created to display the inclusion of personal and social development and its connection with the other capabilities. Sports Coach UK subsequently identified 5 competencies, or the 5 C's, illustrated in Table 2, which underpin personal and social development, namely competence, confidence, connection, character and caring, and creativity. Figure 5, the adopted model of coaching, highlights the position of the 5 C's in relation to the 4 capabilities. Coaches of multi-skills through the Wildcat Clubs therefore aim to develop children in 5 key areas. Physical development includes the child's movement capabilities and fitness levels. Technical incorporates the skills and techniques required to play a range of games, activities or sports. Tactical encompasses the child's knowledge of how to play the game and their ability to solve challenges in sports, games and activities. Mental comprises the child's mental capabilities, including their decision-making skills. And finally, personal and social involves the child's confidence, ability to build relationships, respect for rules and others, and their ability to find their own solutions to problems. Each of the 5 capabilities is linked to the child's stage of development, with increasingly refined and complex skills and challenges being introduced as the child develops and matures to stretch the child's current ability and maximise learning. Table 3 illustrates how the coaching philosophy and Wildcat's pathway embraces the effective, physical and cognitive elements of physical literacy, and demonstrates how these capabilities are not developed in isolation, as the examples provided show how the various capabilities interact and support each other's growth. This echoes Professor Whitehead's earlier comments regarding the interrelatedness of all human capabilities. Finally, when the Wildcat's pathway is charted on the LISPA model, and we consider the origins of the coaching philosophy which has informed this pathway, we can clearly see how the philosophical underpinnings of physical literacy can be translated firstly into high-level policy and then into practice. Due to the ever-growing interest in and developments relating to physical literacy, Professor Whitehead and colleagues recently established the International Physical Literacy Association to advance the education of the public on the subject of physical literacy and to create a global community committed to physical literacy. The International Physical Literacy is constituted as a charity and it aims to fulfil the aspirations through a number of objectives. I would like to summarise my presentation with reference to the first two objectives. A formidable task for the association is to promote the value of physical literacy in fostering a fundamental human capability. A capability without which we could not develop as human beings, that has the potential to enhance and enrich the quality of lives, and which operates in concert with our other capabilities. The association will therefore remain committed to working with different stakeholders to create cultures and communities which value physical literacy. The IPLA also recognises that physical literacy is an evolving concept, and one which will be vulnerable to variation across and within different countries and contexts. However, the association respectfully advise of the importance to acknowledge the core principles that underpin understanding of the concept, and which should be retained, namely, the equal importance of the effective, physical and cognitive aspects of physical literacy, an appreciation of embodiment in both monist and dualist terms, and recognition that deployment of the embodied dimension is a human capability operating in close collaboration with our other capabilities that contribute towards the richness of human potential. So before I end my presentation and we share and discuss questions, I would like to wish you well on your own physical literacy journey and with your endeavours to help others progress as they start or continue their journey. Finally, I invite you to share your expertise and experiences with the IPLA and to become a member of a global community committed to physical literacy. Thank you for your attention and once again for the opportunity to introduce physical literacy at this conference.
Bom, eu já vou começar com a primeira pergunta da Ana Moser.
Open with the first question from Anna Moser.
Ela pergunta o seguinte:
She asks the following: to implement the policy of physical literacy that you presented, which were the starting point that triggered the flame to build a broad and inclusive policy? Was it was born from the government, the schools, the clubs, the universities? How was the first articulation?
Thank you for your question. The driver behind this was Sport Northern Ireland. They have the responsibility for developing sport throughout Northern Ireland, and they demonstrated the initiative in this respect. Our national strategy for sport is actually a cross-departmental policy in that all of the government departments had to be involved in the consultation process. They had to endorse it, and finally they had to sign it off, and that was given final sign-off by our Northern Ireland executive. But in order for it to get that far, there had to be one agency or one group that took the lead in this respect, and that was the Sports Council for Northern Ireland at the time. So there was already a lot of interest within the sports development community, and there was a good time, a lot of interest in the concept, and therefore it was a good opportunity, I think, for the Sports Council to have physical literacy featured in the provisions of the national strategy. It was also very timely because the south of Ireland were also working on their own strategy for sport. So the north and south of Ireland were able to come together and provide the LISPA framework to ensure continuity between the two different governments. But I would add that it was a very long process, and it is an ongoing process. So although it is in our strategy for sport, and it is at high level, we do continue to promote it at a high level to make sure that it's not forgotten about.
Ok.
The other question comes from Carla.
Ela pergunta.
She asks,
Gostaria de saber
I would like to know if you
conhece
know
locais
or is aware of anywhere that implemented the physical literacy model and they presented problems like in terms of gender, girls cannot play with boys, they need to play separately, for instance, or problems of social vulnerability. Youngsters with no space or no public spaces to practice or to play games. In summary, she asks if the model can be adapted to the context we have in Brazil, although I don't know if you were aware of the Brazilian reality.
Is it just whether it can go into grassroots? Okay.
And also, if you can apply this in situations like social vulnerability,
Yes.
Gender issues.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Again, thank you for a very good question. I will try to answer. I will base it on my own experience. As I mentioned, I was responsible for the strategic development of physical literacy, but my heart is in the community, so I wanted to reach the community. And we also have communities which have problems. We have social need, high areas of social need, and we have areas of crime and social deprivation. So my heart belonged in those communities and I tried to get the concept of physical literacy within and across all of the different communities. And my experience was using the multi-skills or wildcats approach simply because of our political situation in Northern Ireland. As you are maybe already aware, we have religious tension in our country, and unfortunately different sports can be associated with different religions. However, the multi-skills concept was not associated with any religion, any economic background, or any gender, and therefore it was able to remove a lot of the barriers associated with other sports. So in addition to promoting physical literacy and making the concept available to others, we were also able to break a lot of barriers that had been presented to national governing bodies of sport. So for example, we have a governing body for Gaelic sports in Northern Ireland, and traditionally it had been very, very difficult for them to go into communities that were maybe hostile or maybe unwelcoming of certain traditions. However, when they looked at the multi-skills concept and they broke down some of their own barriers, they were better received in the communities. So we are just starting this process, but we are making progress. But again, based on my experience, we are able to remove a lot of the barriers, and it is an inclusive concept. No one can be excluded from the multi-skills environment. It is open to all, and that also applies to ability as well.
Ok. Tem uma pergunta. A Paula.
Paula.
Quem é Paula?
Who is Paula?
Quando você fala
when you say
como o programa se relaciona
how
com
the
atividade
program
física nas
relates
escolas,
with physical
está dizendo a
activities in
educação
schools,
física?
you mean physical education in schools?
Bom, a pergunta
Well,
da Paula,
the
então, foi assim,
question
como o
is
programa se
how the
relaciona
program
com atividade
relates
física nas
with
escolas,
physical
como ela está
activities
esclarecendo, ela
in the
está se referindo
schools.
à
She
educação
means
física,
physical education at schools, right?
curricular.
So how's the relation of the program with the physical education curriculum?
Okay. A very interesting question. The language of physical literacy is also endorsed by the Association for Physical Education in the United Kingdom. So They mention it throughout a lot of their policies, and they actually acknowledge the fact that the outcome for physical education in schools is physical literacy. So the Association for Physical Education is trying to inform practitioners that the outcome of the physical education experiences will be physical literacy. So we have it at their policy level, but we also have it then working its way down into the various institutions. So that can include initial teacher education colleges, continuing professional development, and so on. Unfortunately, physical literacy is not expressly mentioned in our own curriculum. However, it is an aspiration that it will be mentioned in our curriculum. We had experienced a curriculum review approximately 8 years ago, and the opportunity to have physical literacy referenced in the curriculum was not realised. However, I am hopeful that next time this opportunity arises, we will have it present. Of interest as well, we also had an intervention in our schools in Northern Ireland where we had physical literacy coordinators, and these posts were funded by the Sports Council for Northern Ireland, and they would go into a range of different schools throughout Northern Ireland, and they would educate the teachers about the concept of physical literacy. I'm not sure if you share the same experience here, but in the UK it's difficult and costly for teachers to get training once they're in schools, so it was a luxury to have ambassadors for physical literacy to be able to go into the schools to promote the concept and also to train them in different initiatives then, again, so that it reached all of the different children.
I have two questions that are in line because they talk about schools. One of them comes from Luiz Gustavo Rufino. He asks, and she answered to assert, what's the role of the school in the process of physical literacy? And second, what's the role of teaching, learning institutions, which are not formal? And he asks, in the international context, which are the institutions that are fulfilling this role?
A point that I had made in my presentation was that ultimately we want to foster a sense of personal responsibility. So we want children and then adults to take responsibility for their own physical literacy. And if we do that, then unfortunately we become unemployed. However, in order to foster this disposition, we do need to rely on others. And in terms of that community of people who will help others, I would advise that this will be specific to the different countries and different cultures and different contexts as well. So within the context of the UK and also within Northern Ireland, it is envisaged that the school will be a member of that community. So the school does have a part to play. However, it must be stressed that schools and teachers should not be burdened with all of the responsibility, because you cannot develop all of the physical literacy skills just through physical education. It is just one of many opportunities throughout a young person's life and even throughout their school day which allows them to develop their physical literacy skills. So we need them to be engaged in physical activity before, during, after the school day. So whilst there is a responsibility on teachers to develop it, we also promote the concept and a sense of ownership then to other agencies as well. So one of the other key partners will be the national governing bodies of sport. So we work very, very closely with partners and also in partnership with the schools as well, because the governing bodies work closely with our schools to try and share this responsibility. And that is something that we have not had to struggle with really, because there was always a very strong partnership there. More recently, we are trying to engage preschool institutions. So we're maybe looking to look at providers of childcare, both at informal and formal settings. So we're looking at perhaps creches, nurseries, but also carers of children perhaps in their own homes, because that is also a popular method. We are also hoping to work with medical professionals so that they are more aware of physical literacy, and that they're more likely to maybe look for indicators of developments in physical literacy as a child progresses, and perhaps something they could draw attention to the parents if and when appropriate. So in response to your question, we rely on a lot of people. It is not one group's responsibility, so we do not want to set the teachers and the schools up to fail in that respect, because it's a very difficult job.
Ok. Peço desculpa para os outros que fizeram
I apologize to the others who asked. I forgot to mention their institution. Fábio D'Angelo from the Institute of Sports and Education asks, would it be possible to say how the teachers are trained who worked in the program Sport Matters? The time of their training, what is the content they learn, spaces, and what is the content of this training? And
I like this question because it is my day job. So I train teachers in Northern Ireland, and I mostly train primary teachers who work with children aged 4 to 11. And then we also have post-primary or secondary education who work with children aged 11 until the age of 18. So there are two different types of systems. In the primary education, we have generalist teachers. So all teachers receive training in all subjects or areas of learning within the curriculum. So as a primary teacher, you have to teach mathematics, English, geography, science, and physical education. And I'm very proud of the organisation that I work for, because we are able to offer them a lot of training. Research conducted by the Association for Physical Education suggested that primary school teachers can receive as little as 6 hours of training in physical education and physical literacy throughout their 4-year degree. In Stranmillis College, we are able to offer them up to 60 hours in their first year, up to 60 hours in their second year, which is compulsory, and they also have the option then to elect specialist modules in physical education. So by the end of their second year, they should have received at least 120 hours of training in physical education. This will be a combination of both practical and theoretical training as well. And physical literacy is still a new concept within education. It's more widely known in sports development. So we have to teach our trainee teachers about this concept. Some of our students have never heard of the concept before, and we have to give them a lot of lectures. They might say too many in physical literacy. And then for post-primary, for age 11 plus, we do have specialist PE teachers. And similar to the primary teachers, they must undergo a 4-year full-time course, which allows them to gain general training in pedagogy, but then allows them to specialise in physical education. Post-qualification then, they're subject to a 3-year programme as well, and they can elect then to avail of a number of continuing professional development courses. But as I had mentioned earlier, this is very difficult for teachers to avail of, simply because of the cost of being released from the school.
A próxima questão,
Next.
eu não entendi o primeiro nome.
I
do
did not
Paixão dos Santos, da Prefeitura de São
understand the first name, Paixão dos Santos, from the City Hall of Santos.
Melanie tem algum conhecimento
Asking whether
sobre
Melanie
a
has any
educação
knowledge
física das
about
escolas
the physical
brasileiras?
education of Brazilian schools,
Se a física,
and
se
if
pode
physical
contribuir
literacy can
para a
contribute
detecção de
to
talentos,
detect talents,
uma vez que somos
since
inexpressivos
we are
em
inexpressive in Olympic Games.
Pressure.
Pressão.
Yes, okay. Yes, again, I don't know whether I can answer this question or give you any secrets, but this was a challenge for me when I first started my role in Sport Northern Ireland. We are also a very proud culture in terms of our sport, although we are very humble. But we do value sport, and we do invest heavily in performance sport and talent identification. So this idea of physical literacy was quite difficult for us to sell to the national governing bodies of sport, and we've achieved this through education. And it was actually a very, very simple message. It was the idea that if you get more young children involved in sport and physical activity, and they have more opportunities, and they develop all of the elements of physical literacy, then arguably you are increasing the quality and quantity of your talent identification pool. So it is hoped that it increases the likelihood of being able to develop better performers. But that is maybe something for national governing bodies to confirm whether they feel that has worked yet.
Ok. O Max, eu vou fazer em português.
I will ask in Portuguese.
Se eu interpretei errado, você me diz.
If I translate your question wrong, please say. Your research shows
Como
how
physical literacy
may support
o letramento formal
for the formal education
envolvendo a língua,
involving language, mathematics,
Singapore,
as well as
such as Singapore.
like Singapore. Did you understand the question?
Do you want me to explain it more, or?
He asks, do your research show how physical literacy can support
Yes.
formal literacy, linguistic math, for instance, such as Singapore math?
I don't know this concept. Is that what they asked me? No, do you want me to say that? Yeah. Okay. I'm not familiar with the model that you've suggested, the Singapore math, but there are numerous studies that have confirmed that involvement in physical activity can, of course, develop other parts of human development, including cognitive and affective. And also, there is a lot of interest in showing how involvement in physical activity, specifically physical education and sport in school, can actually be linked to academic attainment. Because we have a trend in our schools whereby, as the education system becomes more formal and heavily assessed, particularly before their university, there is a huge decline in the amount of provision of both physical education and sport. And researchers are actually trying to demonstrate that it is even more important for pupils to take part in physical activity, and rather than distracting pupils from their studies, it can actually enhance their studies and overall performance. So yes, there's an ever-growing body of research in this area, and it's also helpful, I think, generally to elevate the status of physical education and physical literacy, because quite often within the school environment there tends to be an attitude that it's just PE and that it's maybe not as important as other subjects. So this research has been critical for us in order to elevate the status of physical education and physical literacy.
Se vocês me permitirem, eu vou fazer uma pergunta em complemento a isso.
I will ask a complementary question. how other teachers, the math teacher, the language teacher, science teacher, how do they understand the physical literacy? Do you work with them to develop a knowledge and an awareness about physical literacy?
Yes, we're working with all teachers to promote the concept, because we want to avoid a situation where the development of physical literacy is placed squarely on teachers of PE, when really there can be opportunities for all teachers to engage in learning experiences which can develop physical literacy. And it's also important for them within any particular school culture that they place a value on physical education, so that they can also be ambassadors for the subject and for the concept of physical literacy. In terms of understanding the concept, my experience has suggested that yes, they do understand it, and in a way, maybe they understand it better, because in some cases it's aligned to their own disciplines. Traditionally, teachers of other subjects have been quite nervous of physical education, again because they felt they weren't sporty or good at physical activity, but they like the lecture, they like the philosophy, they like the psychology. They respond well to it and they come with an open mind. So I'm very hopeful that they will also be very good ambassadors for physical literacy.
Well, we are moving to the end. I have 3 more questions to ask, and then we close the meeting. Luiz Gustavo asks, if one person reaches old age, he's from Sesc Piracicaba. If someone reaches old age and he's illiterate, physically illiterate, what are the challenges to make that person physically literate? Is it possible? Aligned with this, Mariana from USP asks, are there specific programs for the development of physical literacy for adults, or you expect adults to be sufficiently literate to get engaged independently on the physical literacy journey?
I would answer yes to the idea that they can become physically literate and that they can restart their journey. And it was a point that I made in my presentation that you can always restart your journey, and we will all be presented with challenges, whether it's in our young life or whether it's in our later stages of life as well. The importance is that we are motivated to restart it, and I think that is probably going to be the biggest challenge for practitioners, is fostering a sense of wanting to restart that journey, particularly as there are other competing priorities in older age and also maybe a higher incidence of bad health and illness as well. So that is going to be the challenge. In terms of interventions, again based on my own experience, we do have a number of different interventions at home which are bespoke to older adult populations, and indeed older people are one of the 4 underrepresented groups in physical activity in the UK. So certainly within Northern Ireland, at least a quarter of our investment in intervention programmes is allocated to working with older people. And as part of that process then, we take part in a lot of consultation exercises. So we don't just come up with a programme and ask them to go. We go and we ask potential participants, what are your barriers, what would you like to do? And when we find out what motivates them, what are their barriers, and we work with them, we find that uptake is very, very high. And again, we have achieved quite a number of our targets in this respect.
Well, the 2 last questions deal with assessment and evaluation. Ampla from Tatiana Freire from SESI asks, what are the strategies to follow up and evaluate the policy of physical literacy? The question that is also connected with this question is, how can we include the physical literacy program in the long-term athlete development when the institution receives kids from different ages and the institution has no conditions to separate the kids by age brackets? So which would be the most adequate evaluation model? The question was asked by Luciana Neder from the institution Luta pela Paz.
In relation to assessment, as I had mentioned in my presentation, a formative and ipsative means of assessment should be used where possible. And it's the idea that whenever you assess, you refer back to the individual's progress. So as a coach or a teacher, are you aware by the end of your session where each of your learners is, what they've achieved, what they'd like to work towards? And equally then, do you remember that at the start of your next session? And also, I would suggest, is of more importance, is are they aware of that? And that's the importance of formative assessment and communication. So when I worked with children, whether it was in a coaching setting or in the classroom or in the gym, where possible, and it is difficult in terms of time, I tried to let the learners know about the progress they had made and about achievements and reminded them of it whenever they returned the following week. But that is a very, very big challenge. What we advise against is any norm reference type of assessment where you have a set of indicators and you're comparing progress of one learner to others. The reason is this can be counterproductive because what it does is it distracts learners from their own progress. As soon as they become aware and interested in who is the fastest, who is the strongest, they lose focus on themselves, and in a way they're setting themselves up to fail because they may never be the fastest or the strongest in the class. So it's always about personal progress. I might need to get further clarification on the other question about, was it different ages?
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you do when you have children and young people from different ages? But in each class you cannot separate them. How can you deal with that in terms of assessment?
Yeah. Okay. In relation to managing different ages within a session or in a lesson, we have this problem also in that they come with different ages, so therefore different intellect, different physical capabilities as well. And we use a different ranges of differentiation strategies. And basically in terms of the tasks that we set them, these will be determined by their age or by their ability. So for example, one gifted individual might be asked to maybe increase their performance or to change the quality of their performance, whereas we may ask others to work in groups or partner up with somebody. So we don't tend to teach to the whole class. We don't teach as a unit of one made up of 30 children. We try and teach 30 children as individuals. Again, this can be very, very challenging in terms of your classroom organisation and management, but it does link into assessment because if you set challenges which are not individual to the learner, then you're setting them up to fail. Does that answer the question? So it's just utilising a different teaching strategies, I think, is the simple answer.
Okay.
Well, we have a very fruitful and long morning, and after a long and fruitful morning of work, we should stop for rest. But don't exaggerate. We'll be back here at 2 p.m. We'll be back here. Enjoy. I know.
Vocês tiveram bastante informação.
You received lots of information, new information, from a philosophical point of view up to the practical point of view. You need time to digest, but enjoy while Melissa is here. Enjoy her presence to discuss. She has a huge experience in what you are more interested in, how to translate this into practice. Have a nice seminar, lovely lunch. See you later.